Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. So Filip Hrgovic prevails over Joyce. He wins a unanimous decision with scores of 97-93, 98-92, and 96-95. The fight played out very similar to how I expected and how I predicted. I said it would be a slugfest, and I said that Filip Hrgovic would win on points. I actually thought it might be a bit closer than it turned out to be, because for me, Filip Hrgovic won this fight hands down. This wasn't a close fight. I was absolutely baffled by the DAZN commentary, especially the scorecard of Carl Frampton. He had the fight razor close. He had Filip Hrgovic only leading by 1 point going into the final round. Absolutely ridiculous. God only knows what he was watching. There's something very strange going on with the public perception on Filip Hrgovic. Very, very strange indeed. Because the consensus seems to be that he's rubbish. Even after the victory over Joyce, I'm seeing people saying that Anthony Joshua beats Hergovich. Hergovich can't beat anybody in the top 10. Hergovich is pillow-fisted, etc., etc., etc. Let's put this into perspective, folks. In Hergovich's last fight, he was lighting Daniel Dubois up like a Christmas tree for the first 3-4 rounds. He eventually gets cut and gets stopped on cuts in whatever it was, the 8th. He never goes down against Daniel Dubois, folks. You see those shots that dropped AJ a bunch of times? Yeah, Hergovich took those. No problem whatsoever. He landed far more punches on Daniel Dubois just in the first 4 rounds than Anthony Joshua did in the 5 rounds that he fought Dubois. And I know that styles make fights, but I'm really not sure where this idea comes from, that following Hergovich's victory over Joyce, AJ must be able to beat Hergovich all of a sudden, even now. And then the notion that Hergovich can't beat anybody in the top 10. Folks, he's already beaten somebody in the top 10. Zhilei Zhang. And that fight was genuinely close. This talk of it being a robbery, nonsense. It was a close fight. Other names in the top 10 would be Michael Hunter, Martin Bakole, Frank Sanchez, Justice Hooney, Lawrence Okoli, F.A. Ajagba, etc., etc. As I say, the 4 sanctioning bodies have different top 10s. I find it an absurd notion that Hergovich can't beat anybody in the top 10. Bizarre, actually. There's also this narrative that Filip Hrgovic has got absolutely terrible stamina. Now, I'm not saying he's got the greatest stamina in the heavyweight division, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as the public narrative is making it out to be. And the reason I say this is because, folks, Filip Hrgovic throws an awful lot of punches. He's not a guy like, for example, AJ, and I know the AJ fans are going to act like I'm picking on him again. I'm not picking on him. I'm just giving you an example. Hrgovic is not a guy like AJ who throws relatively few punches but still gasses out. No, Hergovich throws a lot of shots, and he's a big man, 250 pounds, 6'6". How many shots does he throw? Well, let's have a look at the CompuBox for Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury 1. The first fight they had in May last year. Everybody acknowledges that Usyk throws a lot of punches, and he did in that fight. So Usyk threw over 12 rounds against Fury, 407 punches, and landed 170. 122 of those were power shots. So just think about those figures. Usyk threw 407 punches and landed 170 over 12 rounds in the first Fury fight. Guess how many punches Filip Hrgovic threw and landed in just 10 rounds, so 2 rounds less, in just 10 rounds against Joyce. There you can see it on screen. Filip Hrgovic threw 502 punches over 10 rounds against Joyce and landed 253. 206 of them were power shots. Now, Joyce is the one who's renowned for having an incredible engine, an incredible work rate, right? Over 10 rounds, Joyce threw just 20 punches more than Hrgovic, 522. So Hergovich wasn't that far off of Joyce in terms of punches thrown. But of course, there is a massive gap as far as punches landed. Filip Hrgovic nearly doubled Joyce in punches landed. Hergovich landed 253, Joyce landed just 140. And when you look at the power punches, the gap is even wider. Filip Hrgovic landed 206 power punches, Joyce landed just 73 power punches. So Hergovich more than doubled Joyce for power punches landed. Filip Hrgovic outlanded Joyce in every single round of this 10-round fight. In several of the rounds, he actually doubled the number of punches that Joyce landed. So in the first round, for example, Hergovich landed 31 shots, Joyce only 13. In the third round, he nearly doubled Joyce in punches landed as well. Landed 30, Joyce only landed 17. In the fifth round, Hergovich landed 26, Joyce landed 12. In the seventh round, Hergovich landed 29, Joyce landed 17. In the 8th round, Hergovich landed 18, Joyce landed 10. In the 9th round, Hergovich landed 30 and Joyce landed 12. So, again, what on earth was Carl Frampton smoking? What on earth were the DAZN commentary team smoking? For them to think that this was a razor close fight. It wasn't a close fight. Hergovich outlanded Joe Joyce by a big margin in most of the rounds. But when people go into a fight with a particular narrative in their head, it's like they have this selective vision where they don't see shots landing by Hergovich. Because in their mind, Joyce is going to be the one landing all the shots because he's the guy with the engine. Very, very strange. And like I say, I'm not saying Hergovich has got the greatest gas tank in the world, but he didn't have a full camp for this fight. And he still threw more punches and landed more punches. Over 10 rounds than Alexander Usyk threw and landed over 12 rounds in the first Fury fight. Now, yes, I know that Joe Joyce is a lot easier to hit than Tyson Fury. Yes, I know that Hergovich didn't have to work as hard to get himself into positions to land on Joe Joyce as Usyk had to work to get into positions to land against Fury. I know all this, but I'm trying to just give you guys some perspective. I think Hergovich's biggest issue is not so much the stamina, but it's more so pacing himself correctly. He tends to start very fast, as he did here against Joyce, and he'll sometimes get carried away early in a fight, like we saw him do against Dubois. He gets right hand happy and he thinks he's going to score an early KO. He's not that kind of puncher. He's not pillow-fisted, as some people have suggested, but he's not one of the elite punchers in the heavyweight division. He certainly doesn't hit like Zheli Zhang. But in this fight here against Joyce, he took several rounds off, particularly in the second half of the fight. And that, I guess, is an example of him pacing himself. But he still hasn't got the formula down pat as far as I'm concerned. Because against a fighter who is faster, sharper on the offense than Joe Joyce, he's not going to be able to get away with taking rounds off the way he did here. Because there were certain rounds in the back end of the fight where Hergovich was just stood in the corner for damn near the whole round, inviting Joyce in and then countering. Joyce being big and cumbersome and slow, Hergovich was able to see most of his shots, avoid them, and then punish him. But there will be plenty of other heavyweights out there where that's not going to work. So what I'm saying is, Hergovich needs to stagger his punch output a bit more sensibly, rather than having to take entire rounds off. Hergovich, as I've said many times, has a very alpha personality. He's got a great chin. And when you combine those two elements, that's why I think he's so gung-ho early in fights and throws so many shots. Throws too many shots, really. Because he's not afraid of what's coming back. Because he knows he can take it. And he fancies himself as a massive puncher. He's not a massive puncher. I think we saw glimpses of what Hergovich needs to cultivate, which is that he's actually a pretty good counter puncher. I'm not saying he needs to be a defensive fighter out and out. I'm saying that that aspect of his game needs to be on display a little bit more in perhaps most of his fights, rather than thinking he's going to blast everybody out in a couple of rounds. So overall, I would say it was a solid performance from Hergovich against a game, in shape, motivated Joe Joyce. Hergovich did what he had to do and he won clearly. What would I like to see next for him? I'd like to see him fight preferably two, but at least one person ranked in the top 10. To throw a couple names out there, there's the likes of Anthony Joshua. I'd like to see that fight. Justice Hooney, the winner of Ajagba Bakoli. Michael Hunter, either one of the Perro brothers, Lania or Dania Perro, the winner of Miller Wardley, maybe. A rematch with Zheli Zhang, if he's still in the top 10 when the WBC rankings update. Lawrence Okolie is another possibility. So if Hergovich can get at least one win, preferably two, versus any of the names I've mentioned, then he's going to be right in line for a title shot. I mean, even Joseph Parker, if he can get that fight. Not that Parker needs to fight Hergovich, he doesn't. I'm speaking here from the Hergovich side of things. You know, what would be good for him? I think that teaming up with Abel Sanchez is an inspired move by Hergovich. I think that's a great link up there. Now, as for what's next for Joe Joyce, there are lots of people claiming he's got CTE, saying that his speech has really badly deteriorated. I don't see it, folks. Joyce has always had bad speech. And in fact, in some of his recent interviews, his speech has actually been not too bad. It's been better than his speech was in some older interviews from 4 or 5 years ago. So I think people are barking up the wrong tree regarding Joyce's speech. He's always been verbally challenged. Let's just put it that way. With that being said, taking all the shots he takes is obviously not good for the brain. And he's starting to rack up the losses now. And of course, the guy's nearly 40 years of age. I would say I've got no issue with him carrying on, but one more loss, especially if it's another decisive loss, then I'll be joining the chorus of people telling him to pack it in. Because at the end of the day, this is a guy who has two great wins over Daniel Dubois and over Joseph Parker, who are two of the top guys in the heavyweight division at the moment. It's almost worth giving it one more go for a chance to run it back with one of those guys. It would be a big payday, particularly if he can get Dubois. Now, I don't know how realistic that is. His promoter, Frank Warren, didn't sound very positive after the fight regarding Joe Joyce's future. But Joyce himself seems to have absolutely no intention of retiring. If you heard his comments in the post-fight interviews. In fact, he got quite annoyed with certain interviewers suggesting he should retire. And to just finish up with a few more comments on Hergovich, he's 32 years of age. He's not 39 like Joyce. He's still a relatively young man in heavyweight terms. And so what that means is he's probably going to be around for a good 4 or 5 years, long after, presumably, Usyk, Fury, Joshua, etc. have sailed off into the sunset. Hergovich is probably going to be around in the mix, competing with this new generation. Dubois being the front runner, who's already beaten Hergovich in a competitive fight, but also the likes of Moses Itauma, Bakadir Jalalov, Richard Torres, Martin Bakole even. He's supposedly in his early 30s. The Pero brothers, who I mentioned already. Ajit Kabayel is only 32. These are going to be the names who will be contesting various world heavyweight titles over the next 3, 4, 5 years. In my mind, Filip Hrgovic is very competitive in that landscape. Very competitive. See, never mind what you think Hergovich would do against a Fury or an Usyk or in a rematch with Dubois alone. Because with the exception of Dubois, those other guys are going to be gone soon. Very soon. But give me your view in the comment section below. And before I go, make sure you check out my most recent bit of exclusive boxing content on Patreon. It's a 3-hour film study on George Foreman. That's 3 hours of me analyzing video footage, not still images, actual video footage of the most significant fights in George Foreman's career and explaining and breaking down what made him so effective. It wasn't just brute force and physical strength and punching power. No. Foreman had a much better boxing brain and was much more crafty and clever, even when he was young, than people realize or give him credit for. And I break it all down in a 3-hour George Foreman extravaganza on my Patreon page. If you want to access that video and many other boxing film studies I've done, as well as countless podcasts and what have you, just head on over to my Patreon page, which is called The Brotherhood of Reason, and select the tier called The Boxing Brotherhood. There's no contract, there's no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, and it's very reasonably priced. If you just want to sign up for 1 month and then check out, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, don't miss out on my George Foreman film study. You can access that and my entire back catalog for a very cheap price. It's great value. All of the links are in the description below. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Make sure you guys like this video, share it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out. If you want to access this video along with hundreds of hours worth of other exclusive boxing content, as well as our members chat, just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called The Boxing Brotherhood. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just download the app from the Play Store or the App Store. All the links are in the description box below. And just a quick money-saving tip for Apple users. If you purchase your Patreon subscription on the desktop site or on Android, then you'll avoid the ridiculous 30% fee that Apple charges for purchases made on the iOS app. So if you're on iPhone or iPad, save yourself some money by buying your subscription on the actual Patreon website or on Android because it's a lot cheaper. Once you've made that initial purchase, you can then use the Patreon app on your iPhone or iPad thereafter to access and enjoy your content as normal.